Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tirha Vanacharya. Yamuna Tirha Vanacharya. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tirha Vanacharya. Yamuna Tirha Vanacharya. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Vishnu Pad Paramahangsa Brahmadakacharya Asatara Satushi Shiman. His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Harival. Slava Zubrani Bhaktam. Slava Shri Guru Shri Gaurangi. Om Agana Tavanandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Pradana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakans Vidamscha. Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Sudha Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapa Tribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, Passing Away of Bhishmadev, text number 11. Pandu Putran Upasinan Prashraya Prema Sangatan Yachastanu Raga Gashrayar Andi Bhutena Chakshusha Pandu Putran Upasinan Prashraya Prema Sangatan Abhyachastanu Ragashrayar Ashrayar Andi Bhutena Chakshusha Putran Upasinan Prashraya Prema Sangatan Andi Bhutena Chakshusha Andu Putrani Pasinan Shaya Sangidan Adi Bhutena Chakshusha Pandu Putranupasinan Shraya Prema Sangatan Abhyasa Chandra Shrayar Andi Bhutena Chakshusha. Ladies. Pandu Putranupasinan Ashraya Prema Sangatan Ajasasasasasashraya Andi Bhutena Chakshusha Pandu Putranupasinan Ashraya Prema Sangatan Abhyachastanuragashraya Andi Bhutena Chakshusha Pandu. The late father of Maharaj Yudhisthira and his brothers. Putran, the sons of Upasinan, sitting silently nearby. Prashraya, being overtaken. Prema, in feelings of love. Sangatan, having gathered. Abhyachasta, congratulated. Anuraga, feelingly. Ashray, by tears of ecstasy. Andibhutena, overwhelmed. Chakshusha, with his eyes. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The sons of Maharaj Pandu was sitting silently nearby, overtaken with affection for their dying grandfather. Seeing this, Bhishma Dev congratulating them with feelings. There were tears of ecstasy in his eyes, for he was overwhelmed by love and affection. Purport. When Maharaj Pandu died, his sons were all small children, and naturally they were brought up under the affection of elderly members of the royal family, specifically by Bhishma Dev. Later on, when the Pandavas were grown up, they were cheated by cunning Duryodhana and company. And Bhishma Dev, although he knew that the Pandavas were innocent and were unnecessarily put into trouble, could not take the side of the Pandavas for political reasons. At the last stage of his life, when Bhishma Dev saw his most exalted grandsons, headed by Maharaj Yudhishthira, sitting very gently at his side, the great warrior grandfather could not check his loving tears, which were automatically flowing from his eyes. He remembered the great tribulation suffered by his most pious grandsons. Certainly he was the most satisfied man because of Yudhishthira's being enthroned in place of Duryodhana, and thus he began to congratulate them. So the translation again. The sons of Maharaj Pandu were sitting silently nearby, overwhelmed with affection for their dying grandfather. Seeing this, Bhishma Dev congratulating them with feelings. There were tears of ecstasy in his eyes, for he was overwhelmed by love and affection. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyatyade Sadarane. This is the inconceivable pastimes of Krishna. Generally we speak that if one has love and affection, then one will automatically act according to that love and affection. That love and affection we always consider will bypass any intellectual or other concerns. But here we don't find that. For instance, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains to Arjuna reality, beginning with the fact that everyone is eternally a spiritual soul, and that there was never a time when any of us have ever not existed. We're existing now, and in the future we'll all still exist. And then there is the Paramatma guiding everyone. Everyone is under the control of Paramatma for better or worse. Better if we're following Krishna's instructions, Paramatma's desire, and worse if we decide to go against Paramatma's desires and simply desire his maidservant called Maya, her direction. Then Paramatma has to send us to the darkest regions of existence because he's a judge. And then we have Krishna, who loves everyone, who set up the whole system. And if he did something wrong, if he was actually, the system didn't work properly, if somehow or another it was unfair, the system, unjust, and that good people were unnecessarily being put into tribulations, then Srimati Radharani wouldn't speak to Krishna. She'd be very disturbed at him, and we'd have a divorce in the spiritual world. But it's not like that. Srimati Radharani is all good, and Krishna is all good, and everything that happens is all good, and it doesn't appear good if we're not good ourselves. If we don't understand the truth, then it appears that things are not good, and that we have to correct them. Of course, we do have to correct something. We have to correct ourselves so that we find out what Krishna wants us to do so that we can do something that's actually good. Just like Bhishma Dev, he's not an ordinary personality. He's one of the Mahajans. Swayambhura, Narada Shambhu, Kumara Kapila Manu, Prahlada, Janako, Bhishmo, Vayar Vayasakir Vayam. So he's one of the 12 Mahajans. So to think that sometimes he's in Maya and sometimes he's in Krishna consciousness is wrong. Although, from the external point of view, it appeared that he was watching Duryodhana and company harassing his beloved grandchildren, and as Prabhupada writes, for political reasons, he didn't do anything. Vidura saw the same thing, but he took care of the Pandavas. Now Bhishma Dev saw the same thing, and he had to serve Duryodhana and his father, Dhritarashtra, and apparently he was even fought against the Pandavas. But that's just from external point of view. For instance, in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions that we're all eternal, but you're still going to have to kill your grandfather and your teacher and everyone else. So does that mean that you're going to think, wow, I always wanted to kill my grandfather. What an opportunity. Not only that, I'm not going to get any reaction for it. I'm going to send the old man back to heaven. No, he didn't like, although in the external material world is made in such a way as to be under the modes of material nature, apparently. But still, no one likes to see good people getting harassed. It doesn't fit into the scheme of what we think is right and wrong. But still, above that is the transcendental consciousness where one understands that there's always a higher purpose behind things. That apparently the Pandavas were being harassed by Duryodhana, but if they didn't get harassed by Duryodhana, we wouldn't have the Srimad Bhagavatam. We'd have one less chapter to read. The whole Kurukshetra war wouldn't have come about, and we wouldn't be here either, because there would be no Yudhisthira Maharaj, there would be no cursing of the Parikshit Maharaj, there wouldn't be any reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and where would we be? Who knows? But that's not the way it is. It didn't happen like that. Everything came out, so we heard Bhagavad Gita, the whole battlefield, Kurukshetra, Prabhupada said, was arranged. The whole Mahabharata, there's this huge book, if you read the Ganguly edition of the Mahabharata, there's like 19 volumes. You can spend your years just reading the Mahabharata. First of all, you got to get a translation because it's written in Old English. But in any case, you can spend years reading it, and Prabhupada said the whole essence of the Mahabharata is the Bhagavad Gita. So 700 verses, so we should take the trouble of reading the Bhagavad Gita. The whole thing was arranged just so Krishna can speak the Bhagavad Gita. The whole thing was arranged so that Parikshit Maharaj would hear the Srimad Bhagavatam from Shukadeva Goswami. So much problem, so much disturbance, romance, intrigue, politics, just so that we can get these books. And we think, well, these books are too boring, I wonder. Let me hear about some romance and intrigues and things like that. But the essence of it is that we can concentrate our minds upon Krishna and find out how he's absolutely good. In spite of all these intrigues going on in the material world, apparently why bad things happen to good people. Bad things, there is a rabbi, as you might have heard, his name was Krishna, by the way. And he wrote a book, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. And his conclusion is that actually God is a nice person, but he's old. And you know what happens when old people, they get dementia. They lose their memory, they get arthritis, they can't do what they used to do. So he's actually a nice person, but he's old and demented. Just like in the Sistine Chapel, you have God trying to clutch man, and his hand is shaking. You can't see it, but it's there. early dementia. So, because he's old and feeble and has dementia, therefore there's some talk about his retiring and letting one of the younger angels take over, but maybe not in our lifetime, so we have to tolerate. But actually, that's not the way things are. Actually, bad things don't happen to good people, and good things don't happen to bad people. Because everyone is bad in the material world. And whatever is happening is all good. It just has to be seen from a different point of view. Just like there's an accident on the street, and everyone's seeing it from their point of view. Matter of fact, everyone is seeing everything from their point of view, because everyone is conditioned by the modes of material nature. There's even a Ramayana where the hero of the Ramayana is Ravana. There's a Ramayana written for those in the mode of ignorance, so they can read it and actually have some sympathy for Ravana, that actually he was a nice person. I mean, he had a few bad habits. I mean, he'd eat Brahmins once in a while, but at least he ate prasadam. And he was into raw food. He wasn't such a bad person. But by some trick, when he wasn't looking, Lord Ramachandra hit him with an arrow, and anyhow, that's the way things go in the material world. So everyone has that point of view, because as long as we're conditioned by the modes of material nature, everyone from Brahma down to the insect, or as it says, from Indra down to the insect, everyone is covered by one degree or another of the modes of material nature, which distort our consciousness and let us believe that something's going on which is not going on. But what's really going on is the pastimes of Krishna to get us out of material consciousness back to our original consciousness, whereas Bhishma Deva and the Pandavas here are engaged in loving exchanges with Krishna there also, all based upon Krishna's pastimes. Bhishma Deva knew that the Pandavas would ultimately be victorious. And even if they weren't victorious, he knew that they were pure devotees of Krishna, and everything was being arranged by Krishna perfectly. And he had his part to play, and he played his part perfectly. It's not that suddenly the super soul went dead in his heart, didn't speak to him, and that he was just a political pawn in the hands of Duryodhana. No, Krishna directed him at every moment. And he understood that whatever Krishna is directing me is just part of his pastimes, because otherwise we wouldn't have a Bhagavatam to read. He may not have been thinking about the Bhagavatam, whatever, but he understood that everything that was going on is under Krishna's directions, and it's all perfect. And he didn't lose at any moment his affection for the Pandavas, nor did the Pandavas lose their affection for him. And therefore, it's not that the Pandavas thought, now here is our enemy, our grandfather, he's fighting against us. He's somehow or another, by bad association, he's by Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, his mind has changed, and therefore he's fallen to Maya, etc. Even the devotees think like that about a pure devotee like Prabhupada. That's called illusion. And even some of Prabhupada's disciples, not that they've fallen into illusion, but were already in illusion. As Prabhupada was talking to Giriraj Maharaj one time, they were walking, Prabhupada made a philosophical statement, and Giriraj Maharaj said, "Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada. I didn't understand that philosophical point. I was in illusion." And Prabhupada started to laugh. He said, "You were in illusion. You're always in illusion." So we're in illusion. And out of an illusion, we sometimes even criticize even a pure devotee. Matter of fact, Prabhupada said, when you become a pure devotee, he said in one lecture, the whole world will become your enemy. The whole world is Krishna's enemy. Everyone, this is the place where everyone, except for a few devotees, are actually envious of Krishna. And if you want to find out someone who's also envious of Krishna to one degree or another, then just get a mirror and look into it. You'll see that. Here's an envious person. If we weren't envious, we wouldn't be under the illusory energy. We wouldn't be pretending that we're someone that we're not, namely this body. So everyone is under the illusory energy. Everyone's pretending that there's something that they're not, but at least we know we're crazy. So we're taking the cure, which is devotional service. But as soon as we think, oh, these people are crazy and I'm sane, then it's like people in an insane asylum. Look at this guy, he's crazy. He thinks he's Jesus Christ. He doesn't realize I'm the good fairy. He's really crazy. We're all walking around in this illusion. I'm this body. Look at my body. Isn't it nice? You should appreciate it. That's why I put on perfume and cologne, so you can even smell it and appreciate it. So everyone's walking around in this crazy world, except for a few pure devotees. And therefore, like for instance, in Srila Prabhupada made statements about, as soon as I say a word, immediately I become... Well, he made statements about black people, about Jews, about Hitler, about the moon, about women, about men, about everything. And if you want to criticize Prabhupada, just read his books, which most people don't do, and you'll find out there's something there for you. As a matter of fact, you don't have to read Prabhupada's purports. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, you have Bahuka, the black person churned out of the legs of King Vena. You have Urvashi preaching to Puravana, saying that women's hearts are just like razors. They're sharp like razors, and they'll cut you. And if you want to find out about men, it's the rest of the Bhagavad Gita. Srimad Bhagavatam is mostly about men. You have Duryodhana, you have Dhritarashtra here, you have so many wicked people in Srimad Bhagavatam. And then you have Bhishma Dev, pure devotee, taking the side of the demons, and therefore having to face having arrows shot through his body, seemingly getting some kind of reaction for it, for his taking the side of Duryodhana. Or we have Akrura, because of his taking Krishna out of Vrindavan, the gopis cursed him. Even you do your duty, you do your service in Krishna's, even the devotees curse you. You're trying to do what Krishna wants you to do. He's arranged the pastime. You've come to Vrindavan. You've seen Krishna for the first time. You're his uncle. You're in ecstasy. Krishna embraces you, calls you uncle. Balaram embraces you, calls you uncle. They give you prasadam. Imagine personally being fed by Krishna and Balaram and Nanda Maharaj and Jasoda prasadam. And Krishna praises Akrura, you're such a nice devotee. And then you're taking Krishna back because you're doing your duty. Krishna wants you to do it. He's voluntarily on the chariot. And all the gopis, you're taking Krishna out of Vrindavan, and you're cursed by the gopis. Could you imagine something worse than that? Getting cursed by the gopis? Radharani's cursing you. I mean, at least Radharani has some compassion for us. She knows we're crazy. She generally doesn't curse us. But you curse, and therefore you get involved in intrigue to kill Krishna's father-in-law and steal the Simantaka jewel. So how do you figure that out? Krishna says, take this chariot, ride here to Vrindavan, pick me up and take me back to Mathura, And you wind up killing his being involved in a conspiracy to kill his father-in-law as a reaction for it. And then you get the Simon Thakur jewel. Krishna has to call you. You're afraid. Krishna might be disturbed with you. You flee the city, and then Krishna calls you back and says, Balaram doesn't believe you have the jewel, and then you show the jewel and says, keep it. And Krishna says, keep the jewel. It's all right. Anyhow, things are in the past times and not what they seem to us. So similarly, Prabhupada said different things to different people at different times because that was the opportunity for them to hear something about Krishna. Why he said that, that's our business to figure out what's the perfection of his preaching, why he said what. And if we don't think he was perfect in his preaching, then we'll be covered. We're already covered by that's because we're covered. We won't make any advancement. If we think that Prabhupada had some enviousness in his heart, that he left Vrindavan at the age of 70 years old to come to the Western world with 24 rupees, or whatever it was. He came here and he had some enviousness in his heart. He didn't like the blacks, he didn't like women, he didn't like men, he didn't like anyone, but he came here to save everyone. He spent his whole life translating books and preaching and setting up an institution to preach Krishna consciousness, but in his heart he didn't like anyone. It's absurd. No, or the movement spread because of his enmity towards everyone. Love of God spread all over the world because he had some enmity towards everyone. As Prabhupada at the end, when he was sick, and when so many devotees came to see Prabhupada, including Tirtha, what's his name? Just forgot his name. Not Brahma Tirtha, what's our black devotee who's... Bhakti Tirtha, who was preaching in the communist countries, that he came to see Prabhupada, and Prabhupada embraced him and said, your life is perfect. He didn't say, oh, you have a black body, you'll get another body, a white body in your next lifetime, and then you can make some progress. No, he embraced him with tears and said, your life is perfect because of your service to Krishna. So Prabhupada didn't see black people, he didn't see white people, he didn't see women, but he acted towards women as if they were women. Like when Mataji said to Prabhupada, well, if you read the stories of Prabhupada with the Matajis, you can see Prabhupada treated, most of the time, for them, he was just like a little child. Like when Krishna walked into the arena to battle against the wrestlers, then at that time, everyone saw him differently. The wrestlers saw him as a thunderbolt. The King Kamsa saw him as death personified. The mothers and father, the mother Devaki and Vasudeva saw him as the most beloved child. The members of the Yadu dynasty saw him as the most illustrious ancestor. The wrestlers saw him as a thunderbolt. And the foolish people saw him as the universal form, or as a fool. So similarly, everyone saw Prabhupada differently. And many of the ladies saw him like a little child, as their child. Because that way Prabhupada induced from them service. They knew he was an exalted personality, but he was so innocent. There was no one more innocent than Prabhupada. Because he was in a different world, where he loved everyone. And therefore nothing affected him, because he was in love with everyone, no matter what they did. Not that he didn't act as as a spiritual master and sometimes chastise people, but simply out of love. And therefore, Prabhupada said to the ladies sometimes, he said that, make sure you feed me. So we have to understand Prabhupada's pastimes and all these pastimes as Krishna's arrangement, so that we can learn something from them. Prabhupada, when he was, for instance, we was talking, as I said before, he was talking to a race car driver in England, and he talked about race cars. Does that mean Prabhupada fell into Maya and he suddenly got interested in race cars? And he said, well, there's an opportunity to talk with a real race car driver. No, unless he acted like as a person, then the race car driver had no prior interest in Krishna consciousness. He didn't come there to find out that he was actually eternal soul, that he was identifying himself with the car, was a hum car. No, he didn't, but Prabhupada made a friend with him. And then he had some ability to enter into his consciousness and give him some philosophy. It's like if you go on book distribution and you try to tell people the philosophy, most people will think you're crazy. Of course, most people think we're crazy anyhow. But it will just be confirmed. This person has no brains whatsoever. He's trying to sell me a book by telling me the philosophy in it. And if you sit there, I notice sometimes, I had experience myself, you tell people the philosophy, and they think, well, why should I take the book? I already know your philosophy. Keep the book, I'll save some money. No, that's not the way we sell books. We have to make friends with people, and what they buy is their enthusiasm. You're enthusiastic, you're friendly, why not take the book? Sure, why not? Make you feel good. You made me feel good, I'll make you feel good. So Prabhupada would preach like that sometimes. He'd say things, according to time, place, and circumstance, just to enter into their consciousness so they could hear something. Because he wasn't always successful, but he tried. With intelligent people, he tried to introduce that fact that the body's changing, but the soul's not changing. But most people could not understand that. Even so-called intelligent people. As a matter of fact, more intelligent people are, more than so-called scholars, whatever, the less they can understand a reality. They built up a wall of illusion around themselves. In any case, Prabhupada didn't change. He tried to be friendly. And then he introduced reality. And if they understood it, then they understood. If they didn't understand it. But they'd learn in the future by experience, hopefully, if they had any intelligence. And then they'd remember what Prabhupada said. And then they'd be benefited. So similarly, all this pastimes are going on with Bhishma Dev, but the finality is revealed that they love each other. It's not that Bhishma suddenly developed love for the Pandavas. He always loved the Pandavas. The Pandavas always loved him. But under the circumstances, under Krishna's arrangement, it wasn't externally manifested, but it was always experienced by them. And therefore, Arjuna didn't want to kill his grandfather, but Krishna said, you'll have to tolerate, because this is my plan. And therefore, you'll have to tolerate, because it's for the good of everyone, including Bhishma Dev, on every level. No one by Krishna, anyone who follows Krishna's instructions will benefit themselves and everyone else, and anyone who doesn't follow Krishna's instructions won't benefit anyone, including themselves. So that's the ultimate lesson. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes.
So saying that Prabhupada loved everyone, how can we start approaching that if at the beginning we perceive that others are trying to take advantage of us, or they mistreat us, or this or that?
What does that have to do with Prabhupada? I understand.
No, because we should also approach that level, right? That we would love everyone.
Yeah, but Prabhupada wasn't foolish. he was under Krishna's control. He may have loved everyone, but he didn't. Generally speaking, he didn't get cheated. Like Mr. Nara, the whole pastime of the Juhu temple, creating the Radha Parthasarthi, Rasa Vihari, Rasa Vihari's pastime of getting the land and creating the temple there. Prabhupada was much more intelligent than anyone. Because even he said at the end, everyone's going to go back to Godhead except for Mr. Nara. He even had when he found out Mr. Nara, I believe, died of a heart attack, I think he had a special feast. But it wasn't that he didn't love Mr. Nara, but he understood people are going to get what they deserve. So that's good. You look at the fifth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, when Prabhupada received it, and looking at the pictures of the people being tortured in hell, and Prabhupada's smiling. Because it's one way of learning. It's one way they can get closer to Krishna.
That's correct, but when we are in that situation, we don't see it like that.
That's right. So
Generally.
that's why we suffer. That's good. So we can eventually see like that. So what do? We have to take shelter of Krishna the best we can, and find out what Krishna wants us to do. Not only what he wants us to do, tad buddhayas, tad atmanas, tad nishtas, tad parayanaha, gacchanyapana avritim, jnanidutta kamasha. We don't suddenly see everything equally just by accident. It's by utilizing our intelligence, first of all, trying to see how things actually are, and then try to see with our mind see through our mind with intelligence.
So basically, we just have to go through it until the light bulb switches on.
Until Krishna sees we're sincere, and then he gives Didami Buddhi Yogam Tam. Then he gives us the intelligence, first of all, to see things properly with our mind, and then he gives Tesham Evanu Kampartam. Then he enters into our heart, and then enlightens in our heart, so we actually experience reality and be able to see things, how things are part of Krishna's plan, and therefore develop faith. And then we can develop the attitude of always taking shelter of Krishna, in spite of whatever difficulty we go through, and therefore go through the process of illumination. Okay?
Thank you.
Then we can see everyone equal, the soul and the super soul. Then we begin spiritual life. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Can you tell us, we are speaking about the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam being spoken between Parikshit Maharaj and Srila Sukadeva Goswami, but in the history of Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken many times. But we emphasize this one, and actually the one which was told between the sages of Narashiranya and Srila Sukha Goswami. So how so?
We don't emphasize that one. It's the original one that we know of for our Kali Yuga, but we also read about Vidura talking to Maitreya. We also have the sages in Naimisharanya and Sutta Goswami. We don't think, well, this is not the original. No, this is disciplic succession. We honor the disciplic succession. Supposedly it gets sweeter as it's passed down. The parrot touches the fruit with its beak and it becomes sweeter. So we honor all of them. But the original one we especially honor because that's the foundation. Not that Sutta Goswami said, well, I heard from Shukadeva Goswami to the sage, and now I'm going to speak to you, my dear sages of Naimisharanya. Most of it he got right, but I'll correct whatever he got wrong. No, it's the same thing, but it's given to us because it's even sweeter. Sutta Goswami's he built on Shukadeva Goswami's realization and made it even sweeter. That's why we don't just get. It would be pretty boring, because we're not going to sit there for 7 days a night and fast. Most of us are not so qualified. And hear Srimad Bhagavatam. We hear the Srimad Bhagavatam now and we fall asleep for 5 minutes. Therefore, we hear a variety of stories in different circumstances to make it more interesting. Yes. Anything else? Yeah.
I can do the second one. So, you mentioned Vaishmadeva did not intervene in political games of Kurus against Pandavas because he knew that the arrangement was made by Krishna. Is that right?
He knew what his duty was.
Okay.
He understood that, although he was a self-realized soul, Bhishmadev, he realized, I have the body of a grandfather right now. And I'm getting supported by Duryodhana. And this is Krishna's, more or less, he's indicated that under these circumstances, this is the way I want you to behave. This is what I want you to do. External circumstances, internal circumstances. So therefore he was an instrument for Krishna. Nimitram matram bhavasava sachin. He didn't play a part that, if he had, objectively he didn't want, perhaps, you may say, he would have probably, from our point of view, immediately arrested Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana, etc. But that's not the part Krishna wanted to play. First of all, Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra weren't ordinary personalities either. It's not so simple. These are the bad guys, these are the good guys. There's the cowboys in America, it's the cowboys and the Indians. That's not the way things work in the world. Even Dhritarashtra got liberated by concentrating on Krishna, although he offended the Pandavas, couldn't go back to Godhead. But even he his brother was Vidura, a pure devotee. Even he had good association and took it. Even he understood Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Maharaj, regarding that point, that Dhritarashtra got liberation because of the mercy of Vidura, but because he was offending Pandavas, Krishna didn't want to make him a devotee.
Don't say Krishna didn't want to make him a devotee. No. He wasn't qualified.
He's not qualified.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it reminds me of maybe the different situations we can have even in ISKCON, where we can maybe get the blessings of one pure devotee, but we maybe are inimical towards another pure devotee. It seems like we are in the same situation with Dhritarashtra.
That's right. That's why we go up and down like a yo-yo in our devotional service. You offend any devotee, then we're gonna have to suffer to some extent. Because Krishna Radharani, that's called aparad. Aparad means against Srimati Radharani. The Radharani loves everyone, so we have to be very careful. He loves all, especially the devotees. We offend a devotee, our devotional service is checked to that degree. Therefore, the Chaitanya Bhagavat, a lot of it is about offending devotees and what happens to you.
And so is this between Vidura and Bhishmadev, how they were differently acting? Is there maybe some also level of who is more spiritually advanced?
No.
That maybe Bhishmadeva is a Mahajan or something more advanced, so that's why he was more renounced.
More advanced. There may be something about the degree of ecstasy due to the rasa, but not in these pastimes. It's not like that. They're all pure devotees. You can't see. It says that in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now, Krishnadas Kaviraj said, now I'm going to talk about Krishna's devotees in Chaitanya Charitamrita. But there's so many devotees, and they're all on the same level. It's like the Himalayas. There's so many high mountains in the Himalayas. There's one called Mount Everest, and there's other ones smaller, but how much smaller? For us, well, they're 100 meters smaller. They're all inconceivably high.
Is this like a pure, most pure?
Something like that, but for us, we have, we don't. I have no idea what's actually going on. Maybe a little idea, but not very much. Anything else? Hwala Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.